The sea has always carried secrets. Waves whisper to the shore, telling stories older than memory itself. Beneath the endless blue, myths sleep, waiting for those who dare to listen. Among them is the tale of a god, mighty and vast, whose realm was the deep ocean. Poseidon, ruler of tides, keeper of storms, guardian of treasures hidden beneath the waves. His power was boundless, yet his heart longed for harmony between gods and mortals. And there was once a kingdom, radiant and flourishing, built upon the edge of his waters. Its people thrived, blessed by the sea, singing songs to honor the god who watched over them. Temples rose along the cliffs, and offerings shone in the moonlight, carried by the tides. The bond was strong, woven of faith, respect, and the rhythm of waves meeting stone. But time reshaped hearts, and the memory of gods grew faint like fading echoes. The kingdom rose higher, brighter, wealthier, forgetting the voice that had once guided it. Yet the sea does not forget, and the tide never sleeps. This is the story of Poseidon and the drowned kingdom. The ocean stretches beyond sight, a world vast and eternal, alive with rhythms no land can contain. Deep beneath its surface lies a kingdom unseen, where currents weave stories older than stone. This is the realm of Poseidon, the god of the sea, ruler of tides, storms, and hidden wonders. He is not merely a god of power, but of balance, shaping both calm harbors and restless waves. His trident commands the waters, yet his voice often comes in whispers carried on the tide. To sailors, he is both protector and mystery, guiding them when honored, warning them when ignored. Legends say his eyes mirror the sea itself, endless, shifting, reflecting both peace and fury. Around him, the ocean teems with life, from great whales to shimmering schools of silver fish. Coral forests rise like cathedrals, glowing in colors no flame on land could ever match. Even the silence of the deep carries his presence, a reminder of the divine hand below. But Poseidon is not distant, not unreachable, for his heart listens to the lives above the waves. He watches fishermen at dawn, their boats trembling softly as nets slip into the dark water. He listens to children playing at the shore, their laughter ringing louder than the gulls. He feels the hopes of sailors, whispered into the wind as they leave familiar coasts behind. And in those moments, he is near, though unseen, carrying their voices across the restless sea. His power is vast, yet it is not born of cruelty, but of the ancient need for harmony. For the ocean is generous, offering fish, salt, and travel, but only to those who respect it. Poseidon knows this truth, for he has watched kingdoms rise and fall by the rhythm of tides. He remembers when the first ships dared to cross horizons, small against the great expanse. He remembers their prayers, whispered into waves, carried by trembling hands holding fragile hope. He remembers too when mortals first forgot, when greed outweighed gratitude and silence filled temples. But in this moment, as the tale begins, Poseidon is not a figure of wrath or warning. He is a guardian, vast and watchful, his presence woven into every ripple of the sea. His realm is boundless, stretching from gentle shores to trenches where light has never reached. Every drop of water carries his touch, from morning dew on leaves to storms across the deep. And every life that leans upon the sea unknowingly rests within his gaze, under his care. This is the beginning of the story, not of destruction, but of connection between God and man. For Poseidon's realm is not just the sea itself, but the fragile bond it holds with the world. A bond built on faith, on respect, on songs sung by firelight and prayers cast into foam. This is the realm we enter now, vast, shimmering, eternal, and shaped by the god of the sea. And in its depths begins the tale of Poseidon and the kingdom that once rose above his waves. The kingdom rose from the edge of the sea, where waves kissed the stones of its shining walls. Its harbors gleamed with vessels, sails catching the wind like wings ready to chase the horizon. Markets spilled with laughter, filled with spices, pearls, and stories brought from distant shores. Golden sunlight bathed the towers, their reflection shimmering upon the calm waters below. This was no ordinary place, but a city touched by divine favor and bound to the sea's rhythm. The people knew their fortune was not their own, but a gift carried by Poseidon's unseen hand. They built temples of marble, their pillars carved to honor the god who ruled the tides. Priests lit lamps at dawn, letting smoke rise like prayers carried skyward by the morning wind. At night, the sound of drums and flutes echoed, songs woven with gratitude for calm waters. Children danced along the shore, leaving footprints that waves embraced and carried away. Fishermen returned with nets heavy, their boats steady, their voices singing thanks to the sea. Every street carried the scent of salt and blossoms, a union of ocean and earth in harmony. The kingdom's fields were fertile, nourished by rains drawn gently from Poseidon's clouds. Its fountains sparkled with water so pure, people said it was blessed by the trident itself. Wealth was abundant, but it was not only gold or trade that made the kingdom thrive. It was faith, woven deep into the lives of those who lived in rhythm with the tides. No celebration passed without songs to the sea, no harvest ended without gifts returned to it. Even the stones of the palace bore carvings of dolphins, waves, and shells, symbols of reverence. The ruler of the kingdom, wise and steady, carried a crown adorned with coral and silver. He often walked among the people, reminding them that strength lay not in power, but in balance. And so the city grew, its streets alive with festivals, its nights glowing with lantern light. Travelers from afar spoke of its beauty, calling it a jewel placed carefully upon the ocean. They said no storm lingered long, no drought troubled its fields, no famine touched its people. Every blessing seemed to flow from the sea, a constant reminder of the god who watched. For Poseidon did not simply guard them, he embraced them, as a father does his children. He gave calm winds for voyages, plentiful fish for feasts, and peace within their harbors. The people honored him with joy, not fear, and their bond with the ocean grew ever strong. Here was a kingdom unlike any other, flourishing in harmony with the waves at its gates. But blessings, like tides, rise and fall, and prosperity can whisper both gratitude and pride. For even as the city thrived, the seeds of ambition began to stir quietly within its heart. And though Poseidon's gaze was kind, the sea never sleeps, and it remembers every promise. One night beneath a silver moon, the waves shimmered with light brighter than any lantern on shore. The people gathered in awe as the sea glowed softly, as though it carried a secret from the gods. From the depths rose a gift, cradled by the tide, a pearl unlike any ever seen by mortal eyes. It was vast, glowing with gentle radiance, its light shifting like waves beneath the night sky. The pearl pulsed with a rhythm, as if it breathed with the sea, alive with its endless song. Priests lifted their hands, voices trembling, for they knew this was no ordinary treasure of the deep. It was Poseidon's gift, a symbol of favor, bestowed upon the kingdom that had honored his name. The king himself stepped forward, bowing low to the ocean, and accepted the pearl with reverence. He declared it the heart of the kingdom, a sacred bond between sea and land, man and God. The pearl was placed in the grand temple, at the very center, where moonlight touched its glow. Each night it shone softly, filling the halls with calm as though Poseidon himself lingered near. Fishermen prayed before it, asking for safe journeys, their voices echoing against the marble walls. Mothers whispered their hopes for children, believing the sea would carry blessings to their homes. Even children marveled at its glow, saying it sang faintly, like waves rolling against the shore. And perhaps it did, for some swore they heard whispers within its light, soft as ocean breeze. The pearl became more than a gift. It became the soul of the kingdom, binding all together. Festivals were held in its honor. Lanterns floated on the waves, carrying thanks to the sea. Musicians played by the temple steps, their flutes imitating gulls, their drums echoing rolling tides. Merchants offered first fruits of trade, laying coins, shells, and silks before the shining pearl. Every prayer, every gift, every song returned to the same truth. The sea was their guardian. Poseidon had given not only wealth, but a reminder that harmony was the true treasure of life. The pearl's glow guided sailors far from shore, a beacon that called them safely back to harbor. Even travelers who saw it from afar spoke of its light as divine, a star fallen to earth. The people trusted it deeply, believing no storm could harm them while the pearl shone bright. Hope grew strong in their hearts, and faith tied them ever closer to the sea's eternal power. But with every blessing comes a test, and gifts of gods are never given without purpose. The pearl was more than a jewel. It was a mirror of the kingdom's heart and devotion. As long as their respect endured, its light would remain, calm as waves under a gentle breeze. But should they falter, its glow would dim, warning of balance lost between land and sea. For Poseidon did not simply give, he reminded. He watched. He waited with patient tide. And though the pearl shone like a star, its true purpose was hidden, known only to the god. So the kingdom thrived, united by its glow, unaware that the pearl carried a promise as well. The kingdom continued to flourish, its towers gleaming brighter with each passing season of the sun. Trade routes stretched across distant seas, bringing silks, jewels, and spices into the crowded markets. Ships grew larger, their sails painted with colors bold, symbols of wealth carried across the horizon. Merchants spoke proudly of their fortune, saying the pearl had made their city untouchable and eternal. Yet pride has a voice soft at first, like a whisper, but it grows louder when left unchallenged. The people who once sang for Poseidon began to sing for themselves, their voices lifted in vanity. Temples once filled with incense now grew quiet, their altars holding dust instead of fresh offerings. The prayers that had bound the people to the sea slowly faded, replaced by ambition and desire. Fishermen still cast their nets, but fewer returned to bow before the glowing pearl in the temple. The king, once humble, grew proud of his empire's reach, believing it was his hand, not the sea's. He wore the crown of coral and silver as if it were proof of his greatness, not a gift. Advisors whispered of expansion, of lands beyond the horizon that should bend to the kingdom's will. The pearl still shone, but its light seemed different, thinner, like a song sung with less breath. Elders warned the court, saying the glow was not fading by chance, but by forgotten reverence. Their words were met with laughter. For who could fear the sea when wealth overflowed the city's gates? The young nobles held feasts longer than prayers, their halls filled with music and gold instead of hymns. Children grew up knowing the pearl as a treasure, but not as a bond between man and God. And so the bond thinned, thread by thread, woven weaker with every festival that excluded the sea. Poseidon, from his realm, watched in silence, his eyes reflecting sorrow deeper than the darkest trench. He did not strike. He did not roar, for his nature was not wrath, but balance, unbroken by time. Instead, he waited, as tides do, patient and certain, knowing pride always reshapes the fate of mortals. The sea gave subtle warnings. Fish swam further from shore, waves lapped higher against the stone walls. Yet the people dismissed these signs, saying fortune could not abandon a city chosen by the gods. The king held banquets beneath banners of gold, declaring their reign eternal, their pearl invincible. He called it the jewel of the earth, forgetting it was never his, but the sea's to grant. And pride, once a whisper, had become a song, echoing louder than prayers ever had before. The people still gazed upon the pearl, but now as possession, not as a promise to honor. Its glow dimmed further, not in anger, but in sorrow, reflecting the silence of forgotten devotion. Poseidon's voice no longer reached their dreams, for their hearts were closed, their ears turned inward. The drowned kingdom was not yet born, but already its shadow stirred beneath the restless waves. And the sea, eternal and patient, carried the memory of every forgotten prayer in its rising tide. The kingdom continued to flourish, its towers gleaming brighter with each passing season of the sun. Trade routes stretched across distant seas, bringing silks, jewels, and spices into the crowded markets. Ships grew larger, their sails painted with colors bold, symbols of wealth carried across the horizon. Merchants spoke proudly of their fortune, saying the pearl had made their city untouchable and eternal. Yet pride has a voice soft at first, like a whisper. But it grows louder when left unchallenged. The people who once sang for Poseidon began to sing for themselves, their voices lifted in vanity. Temples once filled with incense now grew quiet, their altars holding dust instead of fresh offerings. The prayers that had bound the people to the sea slowly faded, replaced by ambition and desire. Fishermen still cast their nets, but fewer returned to bow before the glowing pearl in the temple. The king, once humble, grew proud of his empire's reach, believing it was his hand, not the sea's. He wore the crown of coral and silver as if it were proof of his greatness, not a gift. Advisors whispered of expansion, of lands beyond the horizon that should bend to the kingdom's will. The pearl still shone, but its light seemed different. Thinner, like a song sung with less breath. Elders warned the court, saying the glow was not fading by chance, but by forgotten reverence. Their words were met with laughter, for who could fear the sea when wealth overflowed the city's gates? The young nobles held feasts longer than prayers, their halls filled with music and gold instead of hymns. Children grew up knowing the pearl as a treasure, but not as a bond between man and God. And so the bond thinned, thread by thread, woven weaker with every festival that excluded the sea. Poseidon, from his realm, watched in silence, his eyes reflecting sorrow deeper than the darkest trench. He did not strike, he did not roar, for his nature was not wrath, but balance unbroken by time. Instead, he waited, as tides do, patient and certain, knowing pride always reshapes the fate of mortals. The sea gave subtle warnings. Fish swam further from shore, waves lapped higher against the stone walls. Yet the people dismissed these signs, saying fortune could not abandon a city chosen by the gods. The king held banquets beneath banners of gold, declaring their reign eternal, their pearl invincible. He called it the jewel of the earth, forgetting it was never his, but the sea's to grant. And pride, once a whisper, had become a song, echoing louder than prayers ever had before. The people still gazed upon the pearl, but now as possession, not as a promise to honor. Its glow dimmed further, not in anger, but in sorrow, reflecting the silence of forgotten devotion. Poseidon's voice no longer reached their dreams, for their hearts were closed, their ears turned inward. The drowned kingdom was not yet born, but already its shadows stirred beneath the restless waves. And the sea, eternal and patient, carried the memory of every forgotten prayer in its rising tide. The pearl's glow waned with each season, yet the people carried on as though nothing had changed. Markets bustled with wealth, ships sailed with treasure. But the sea gave less than it once had. Fishermen whispered of empty nets, of waters growing barren where fish once swam in silver clouds. Sailors spoke of storms that rose sudden and fierce, as if the waves themselves carried unrest. Still, the king dismissed these tales, calling them the fears of men who lacked faith in his reign. He claimed the pearl's dimming was illusion, a trick of age, not a warning from the deep. Advisors urged more conquest, saying foreign riches would fill the gaps left by the sea's retreat. And so ships sailed further, chasing gold and power, while home the sea withdrew its gentle gifts. The temples lay quiet, the altars bare, their silence louder than the hymns that once rose high. Priests who remained spoke softly of Poseidon, but their voices were drowned in laughter and wine. The city shone brighter on the surface, yet shadows grew long beneath the unbroken rhythm of tides. Children played in the courtyards, unknowing that their laughter echoed over forgotten prayers. Merchants haggled for gems and silks, unaware that the sea's generosity could not be replaced. Elders sat in silence, remembering the days when the pearl's light warmed even the coldest nights. They saw its dim glow and felt sorrow, but few listened to wisdom softened with age. The king declared new monuments, towers of marble to show eternal glory, not eternal gratitude. Workers carved stone with pride, yet none offered a prayer to bless the earth or the sea. And so the bond thinned further, fragile as glass, yet unseen by eyes clouded with desire. Poseidon still watched, his patience vast, his silence heavier than thunder waiting to break. He sent dreams to a few, visions of rising waters and a city swallowed by the tide. But the dreamers awoke in fear, and when they spoke, their words were met with ridicule. The pearl flickered in the night, faint as a dying star, but still the people looked away. They saw wealth in their hands and believed it eternal, not knowing the sea holds all eternity. The waves pressed harder against the harbor walls, but the people built higher towers in defiance. The balance was shifting, not in rage, but in certainty, as steady as the turning of seasons. Poseidon did not punish, for the sea does not punish. It remembers, and it restores balance. Yet balance, once broken, cannot return without change, and change does not come without loss. The people still danced, still feasted, unaware that silence was shaping their fate below. The drowned kingdom was not yet born, but its story was already written in the fading light. For the sea waits always, and when devotion is lost, it claims what was never truly given. The seasons turned, and the pearl's glow had grown so faint it could barely light the temple walls. Few came to see it now, and those who did whispered of its fading as though it were a secret. The priests lit lamps to disguise its weakness, but even flame could not restore the warmth it once held. The king declared the pearl no longer mattered, saying glory came from conquest, not the sea's blessing. And so he sent ships farther still, seeking treasures beyond the horizon, blind to the cost at home. Storms rose more often, fierce and sudden, scattering fleets and swallowing cargo into the deep unknown. Merchants complained of losses, but the king silenced them, saying fortune always tests the boldest hearts. Yet the people began to worry. For food grew scarce, the seas no longer gave as they once had. Fishermen sat on empty docks, nets torn and dry, staring at waters that seemed colder than before. Some said they heard whispers in the waves, voices calling, neither cruel nor kind, but sorrowful. Children played less by the shore, frightened by the way the tides rose higher with each moon. The pearl flickered like a dying ember, and some believed it mourned the people who had abandoned it. Elders remembered the old songs, and a few still sang them, their voices trembling with fading hope. But their hymns could not carry alone, for devotion requires unity, and the city no longer listened. The king built new towers of stone and silver, monuments to himself, blind to their hollow foundation. He laughed at warnings, dismissing dreams of floods and ruin as tales of fearful minds. Yet in secret, even he looked upon the pearl with unease, though pride kept him from confessing it. Poseidon watched still, not with anger, but with sorrow, for balance was nearly lost. The sea grew restless, its tides higher, its winds stronger, its silence heavier than any storm. Dreams spread among the people, visions of waves rising, of the city sinking into endless blue. Many awoke trembling, yet none spoke loudly, for fear of mockery or fear of truth. Markets grew quieter as hunger crept, though gold still glittered, useless against the silence of the sea. Children cried for bread, mothers whispered prayers forgotten for generations, too late to mend the bond. The pearl dimmed further until it was no more than a pale shadow of its once radiant light. And with each flicker, the city's future grew uncertain, though its people still clung to pride. The drowned kingdom was not yet born, but its breath stirred beneath the dark waters waiting. Poseidon did not strike, he did not rage, for tides never hurry. They come when the balance demands. And in that waiting silence, the sea prepared to reclaim what devotion had once freely given. One night the winds rose without warning, howling through the streets like voices long forgotten. The sea churned with strange restlessness, waves striking the harbor with force unseen in living memory. Fishermen watched from the shore, their faces pale, nets abandoned at their feet, hearts heavy with fear. The pearl flickered in the temple, glowing weakly as if straining to hold back an unseen tide. Priests knelt and prayed aloud, their voices trembling. Yet their hymns felt thin against the roaring sea. The king ordered calm, declaring storms only storms, dismissing omens as shadows of weak hearts. But in the silence between thunder, many heard a deeper sound, a pulse rising from the deep. It was not rage nor fury, but something older, the voice of balance long neglected by mortals. Children clung to their mothers, their eyes wide, asking why the sea seemed angry when it once gave. Elders wept quietly, knowing their warnings had been ignored and time for mending was slipping away. The harbor walls trembled beneath the weight of waves, stones groaning as water pressed against them. Merchants abandoned their goods, silks and jewels forgotten in the rush to flee the rising tides. The pearl dimmed further still, its glow paling until it seemed like the last breath of hope. Some swore they saw shadows moving in the waves, vast forms gliding beneath the turbulent surface. The city bells rang in panic, their sound swallowed by thunder and the crash of endless surf. The king stood in his hall, crown upon his head, insisting the city was eternal, unbreakable. Yet even he could not silence the fear in his heart as the palace shook with the storm. Poseidon did not appear in form or fury, for gods of the sea speak not in shapes, but in tides. The storm was his voice, the silence before it his sorrow, the waves his reminder of forgotten vows. The people ran through streets once bright with festivals, now rivers of rain and foam from the sea. Children cried for safety. Families huddled in temples that no longer held the strength of devotion. The priests sang louder, desperate, but their voices echoed hollow against the dome of the empty shrine. The pearl, last link of light, flickered once, twice, then steadied faintly, as if clinging to memory. A whisper filled the air, not heard but felt. Sorrow deep as the ocean's endless heart. Poseidon had not abandoned them, but their bond had grown too thin to hold back what was coming. The drowned kingdom stirred in the waves, a fate waiting not in cruelty but in certainty. And as the storm raged on, the city realized the sea they had ignored was no longer silent. Balance had come to collect its due, and the tides rose not in anger, but in truth. The storm did not fade with dawn, but grew heavier, as if the sky itself was weeping for the city. Waves pounded the harbor, breaking stone walls that had stood for centuries against gentler tides. The people ran through flooded streets, their torches extinguished by rain and salt carried on the wind. The pearl flickered weakly, its light struggling like a breathless heart, dimming faster with every crash of waves. Priests clung to its altar, their voices hoarse, begging Poseidon for mercy they had long abandoned. But mercy does not come when devotion has turned cold. Balance answers only to truth. The king stood on the palace balcony, his crown heavy, his robes soaked, eyes fixed on the sea. He shouted that their city was eternal, yet his voice was drowned by the roar of the storm. The people no longer believed him, for walls cracked, towers leaned, and streets filled with rushing water. Mothers held their children close, fathers sought boats in vain, but the waves swallowed every path. The elders whispered old hymns, their voices trembling, but the young only cried for safety. Some swore they saw Poseidon's shadow in the clouds, not wrathful but sorrowful, vast as the horizon. The pearl shone once more, a final flare casting pale light across the drenched city. In that glow, the people saw what they had forgotten. Faith, unity, gratitude, all now beyond reach. The light faded quickly, leaving the temple dark, the bond severed, the silence deeper than the storm. Winds tore roofs from homes, waves swept through marketplaces, treasures lost beneath swirling depths. Ships anchored in the bay broke free, dashed to pieces against rocks like toys in a child's hand. The king fell silent, his pride crumbling as he watched his city drown beneath relentless water. Poseidon did not speak, yet his presence was felt in every wave, every crash, every breath of the sea. The drowned kingdom was not born in rage, but in sorrow, a reminder that balance cannot be denied. Families huddled together, praying too late, their voices swallowed by thunder and rising tides. The pearl, now dark, lay still in the temple, no longer a beacon, only a relic of memory. The city that had once glittered with wealth and pride sank slowly, stone by stone, into the sea. Some tried to flee to higher ground, but the waves rose faster, swallowing temples, towers, and palaces. The storm raged on, unyielding, as though the sea itself was reclaiming every grain of stone. And through it all, Poseidon's sorrow lingered, for he had given them every chance to remember. The drowned kingdom had come, not as punishment, but as balance, inevitable as the turning tide. And beneath the waves, silence fell, carrying the weight of forgotten prayers into the deep. The storm passed at last, leaving only silence, a silence heavier than the roar of waves had been. The city was gone, its towers broken, its streets buried beneath the endless, restless sea. Only fragments remained, arches of marble, shattered statues, and scattered jewels glimmering on the ocean floor. The pearl, once radiant, lay dim in the temple ruins, its glow extinguished, its promise forgotten. No laughter echoed, no prayers rose, only the sound of currents weaving through drowned stone halls. Fishes swam where merchants once haggled, and corals clung to walls where children had played. The marketplace lay silent, covered in sand, its stalls now shelters for creatures of the deep. The palace had collapsed, its crown of silver and coral swallowed, its king remembered only in silence. Above, the surface glittered with sunlight, calm once more, as if the storm had never been. Yet beneath, the drowned kingdom lay still, a memory preserved in water, sorrow, and balance. Poseidon did not rejoice, for gods of the sea do not celebrate loss, they only remember. He had given them gifts, blessings, warnings, but mortals had forgotten, and the sea could not forget. Balance had returned, not with cruelty, but with certainty, for all tides must come full circle. The drowned kingdom became legend, its story carried on waves to distant shores and listening ears. Sailors spoke of ruins below, of glowing shadows, of a pearl that flickered faintly in the deep. Some claimed to hear voices beneath the waves, whispers of prayers too late to be answered. And so the tale spread, a warning woven with sorrow, carried in the song of the sea. Children on faraway shores learned to honor the waves, to sing hymns at dawn, to offer thanks. They learned that wealth is fleeting, towers crumble, but balance endures as long as tides return. Poseidon still waits, patient as ever, watching each shore, each city, each mortal heart. For the sea gives and the sea takes, not in anger, but in truth, as it always has. The drowned kingdom rests beneath the waves, a mirror of pride, a memory of forgotten devotion. Its silence is not empty, but full, carrying the weight of every prayer never spoken. And above, the ocean continues, endless, vast, eternal, bearing witness to the stories of humankind. The pearl remains, dim but unbroken, a relic of balance, a reminder that gods do not forget. Perhaps one day it will glow again. Should another heart remember gratitude and speak to the sea. But until then, it lies in shadow, as the drowned kingdom sleeps beneath the timeless waves. And the tide moves on, steady, eternal, whispering its story to all who dare to listen. The sea remains eternal, vast and patient, carrying stories in waves that never cease their journey. The drowned kingdom is no longer seen, but its memory drifts with every tide and every whisper of foam. Legends say its towers still gleam faintly when the moon is high and the ocean perfectly still. Sailors claim to glimpse shadows of marble columns rising in the deep, like ghosts of a vanished age. Fishermen tell of voices heard at dawn, soft as a hymn, fading as quickly as the morning mist. Children on distant shores repeat the tale, their eyes wide with wonder, their hearts learning reverence. They speak of Poseidon not with fear, but with awe, as guardian of balance, giver and taker of tides. The sea, they learn, is not an enemy, nor a treasure chest, but a living force deserving respect. The drowned kingdom becomes more than ruins. It becomes a lesson, etched into the rhythm of waves. No empire can outshine the sea. No tower can rise beyond its reach, for all return to water. Poseidon still watches, not with wrath, but with endless patience. For mortals are ever forgetful. Yet he listens when songs are sung, when shells are cast upon the shore, when gratitude is spoken. The pearl remains below, faint but unbroken, its dim glow a reminder of what once was and may be. Perhaps one day it will shine again, called forth by hearts that remember humility and devotion. For the sea does not hoard forever, it gives back to those who honor its voice and keep its balance. And so the story travels, carried on waves, told by winds, remembered by stars above the horizon. It becomes not just a warning, but a promise that the ocean listens to those who truly see. The drowned kingdom may sleep, but its tale breathes in every tide that touches every distant shore. In each ripple, in each wave, in each storm, Poseidon's memory lives on, timeless and unyielding. The ocean teaches gently, through loss and renewal, through silence and song, through ebb and flow. It reminds mortals that life, like the sea, moves in cycles, rising, falling, yet always returning. The drowned kingdom lies beneath, but its spirit rises above, shaping the hearts of those who hear. And so the tide continues, steady and eternal, weaving its story into the fabric of all time. Poseidon waits, not with anger, but with the certainty of the sea, knowing all things return to him. The tale of the drowned kingdom closes, but the ocean's song goes on, endless, eternal, forever.